Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House on the 4th of July here in the States. Happy 4th, everybody, alongside Mr. Martin Popoff, of course. You guys don't
Absolutely.
celebrate. No 4th of July for you today, but you guys had,
Yeah, we had Canada Day a couple days ago. Yeah.
yes, that's right. So
Yeah.
we do it in the same week, right? Which is
Yeah.
cool.
And we're celebrating a lot up here because the Jays are doing rather well right now, which is really cool.
And we
Yeah.
spanked the Yankees for four straight games, right?
Yeah, that's been pretty wild watching that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I did not expect that. That's, hey, you know what? You need. In some of these tight baseball divisions, you need other teams coming in and being competitive from time to time, right? You can't have the same teams year after year after year. So I'm happy for the Jays. I hope they do well because I
yeah.
mean, folks have been picking them to be this kind of team for a couple of years now. I mean, they got to strike while the iron's hot. You got some of those big players who are still somewhat
Yeah.
youngish. You can't let their peak years fall by the wayside without having any success, right?
I know, but with so many games, right? It's like people
It's
get
a
hot,
long
then they
season.
get
Yeah.
cold, and it's just a statistical grind to the end, right? We know they're going to lose a bunch in a row at some point as well, too, right?
Well,
And
I know
they,
all about that. My Mets have had a rough couple of weeks, let me tell you. Oh, jeez.
yeah.
Yeah, I really think, again, not that I want to change it because it's tradition, but I really think the season is just way too long.
Yeah.
Too many games, way too long. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be, but it's like when you really think about 162 games, well, that's a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
baseball, right?
Pretty
It's
nuts.
like, would
Pretty
it
nuts.
really be the end of the world to cut it down to like 100 or 120? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right, so we've got a sort of a sequel to our last episode from 2 weeks ago, which plenty of you watched and really enjoyed, which I'm great to see. Uh,
Yes, thank you.
but instead of just doing like a part two of it, which is what we were originally intending, Martin came to me a couple days ago and he was looking through the comments of that video, and he's like, "Why don't we pick out like 20 albums each that people put in the comments as albums that they thought should have been huge by notable bands, and specifically pick out albums that, you know, we like and love, but we look at them and we're like, yeah." There's probably reasons why these albums weren't big and huge and successful, right? As much as we would have liked them to have been, maybe there are certain qualities or aspects of it that prevented them from being huge. So again, we're not saying we dislike these albums or that, it's, the fact that you guys picked them was not a good thing. We totally get it. We love them. But the more you look at them and the more you think of them, there's probably really good reasons why these albums didn't do better than we would have liked them to do. So that's more like what we're doing. So we're taking your picks and trying to figure out, well, what happened here, so to speak, right? Does that kind of make sense, Martin? I think I have
Absolutely. Yeah. It's gonna be a little bit of chaos because it's 20 each, right? So we're
yeah,
gonna kind of go through these quickly and I don't know. We'll see how these points sort of pan out on it. I guess we'll go five each as we
yeah,
go back and forth, eh?
yep.
All right. Okay. So my first choice is UFO Obsession. Now, I love this record, and I often wonder why didn't UFO make it? And I was thinking about this album, and I thought, you know what? None of these bands like this did that well. Thin Lizzy didn't do well. Priest wasn't doing well yet. Rainbow wasn't doing well yet, right? So, part of this I think is, we think, oh, it should have done better. There's a couple things I think going against them here, and one is, well, three actually. Possibly the drugs situation, possibly Michael's situation in the band, and maybe his mental health being a little fragile. Possibly the idea that they're not moving to LA. They are an English band, possibly because they're on Chrysalis.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is a great sounding record. I find it a little bit boomy and harsh, a little bit mid-rangey, a little bit sort of caved out in the middle. And it also does a lot of things. It tries a lot of different things. I don't think there's particularly a lot of hit songs on here. Maybe Only You Can Rock Me, which was a bit of a hit, but a lot of the rest of this, it's either too heavy or too mellow kind of thing. Cherry Baby's kind of cool too. Anyway, so that's my first choice. And then also along the same lines, Thin Lizzy Black Rose. I feel like maybe Phil was a little bit too bizarre to be seen as a proper normal sort of frontman for America. There was the drug situation as well. It was getting worse around this time. This is another band that did not move to the States, and we know that they had a few fits and starts with blowing up tours earlier on for various reasons, right? Hepatitis, Robbo getting his hand cut up. Um, it's maybe also the time. We look at this time, and I always say 78 into 79, there seemed to be a lull in the acceptance of hard rock. It was past the golden era of your Kiss and Aerosmith and Blue Oyster Cult at their height kind of thing. So 79, we might have been moving to the Cars and the Knack Zone kind of thing.
Plus, there's the Van Halen factor too, right about that time also.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, yep. So, and again, I think they try to do too many things on this album for it to be a standard, stupid hit album kind of thing, right? Um, so yeah, sometimes when we want to be condescending about this situation, we say it went over everybody's heads, right? That's kind of the phrase you use, right? Next, I don't have a physical of this anymore, but Detective was brought up in the comments. I see this quite often, and every time I play that album, I think this is not very good. I really don't think it's got hits on it. I don't think the production's good. It's very caveman-y. And I don't think there's a lot of great personalities in the band. They didn't dress well either, right? But yeah, it was just kind of a funny, dated sort of band, confused direction. I always bring up Widowmaker when I talk about this band, British Lions. There's a bunch of these bands, Wildlife, that just seem to have confused directions.
I think they were trying very hard because they were on Swan Song. I think they were trying very hard to kind of hit on a little bit of Zeppelin, a little bit of Bad Company,
Yeah,
and try to have our own personality. Maybe they really didn't have enough personality. I personally like the album,
mhm,
um, but I can see why maybe it wasn't like bigger than it was. It
yeah,
kind of was like a band trying to be something else. I
yeah.
like it for what it is, but yeah, it's
And it fits into that category. Maybe there's a show here. Maybe we've done this show already, but albums that you really want to like, that you like the whole idea, the package, and the concept, and then you try and you try and you try and you just can't get past that thing. And I feel that way about the first Babies album, right? I've always said this, right? Where I go, being who we are, it should be our favorite Babies album, right? It's the first one. It's all that kind of stuff. It's coming out at the right time, but I just find it. I think it sounds like the Detective album, frankly. All right, next I've got Budgie, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. I don't think I have a physical of this anymore. So this is the band's third album. And again, Budgie gets brought up all the time of these bands that should have been bigger thing. And you and I know we've talked about this before and we kind of agree on it. They're just a little bit too oddball, right? This is a gatefold album with Roger Dean artwork. It looks like a prog album. It's got, I don't know, something like 7 songs on it. Not
yeah,
a lot of
there's a lot.
songs, really bizarre titles. Bread Fan's amazing. In the Grip of the Tire Fitter's Hand is okay. It's kind of heavy, but then there's heavy stuff, there's quiet stuff. Um, and they're a trio. This is, we love Burke Shelley, but I've heard a lot of people say I'm not crazy about Burke's vocals. So there's a lot of reasons. Again, they're on MCA. They've got this patchy sort of release history in the early days. MCA, A&M. Again, they're from Wales. They're a band that is not moving to the States as well. Next, I've got Captain Beyond. This one's brought up all the time. Everybody loves this album. I find it completely dated, depressing. Sounds old for when it came out. It's one of those I would love to love. It's a minor supergroup album. It's got the 3D cover that you could get and that cool character on it. But I just find it way behind the times and not nearly as heavy as everybody seems to remember it. When I go through it, I'm just never all that excited about it. So yeah, I just feel it's a little bit too acid rock to be a hit album for its era. So there you go. That's my first 5.
Yeah, I personally love the Captain Beyond album, but that's not a hit album at all. A influential album, important to, I mean, because it's kind of progressive, it's kind of heavy, it's kind of like stonery, it's like a little bit of everything, and
Yeah.
There's really nobody else doing anything like that at the time. So I love the vocals on it. I love the guitar
And
playing.
when we say stonery, we don't mean Black Sabbath. What we really mean is
Correct.
Steppenwolf and Iron Butterfly,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
True. Yeah. It's yeah, definitely not that. It's more of I don't know, these band more of like instead of saying stoner, maybe I should say heavy psych. That's probably a better
Yeah.
term for it.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Yep.
exactly. But I personally love it. And to go back to the UFO album, as much as I think it's cool, that Hypnosis album cover, that's not quite for the masses, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not quite for the masses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? Like it's you have these kind of cool British and like kind of UK European bands who just really weren't hitting it big around that same time and following in the footsteps of like Zeppelin, Sabbath, and Purple and Heap and whatnot. And it's
Yeah.
perplexing, right? But yeah, there is maybe too many different styles. I mean, it's my favorite UFO album, but there's probably too many different styles on this album. You're right, a couple too many light songs. The heavy songs are great. There's too many interludes, right? It's kind of messy. So. All right, so let's start off here. My first one, just kind of grabbing stuff here. Gary Moore, Corridors of Power. Few people picked this. I love this album. It's my favorite Gary Moore album. But you know what? Again, not the greatest production in the world. Maybe there's a little bit too much guitar, even though there was a lot of guitar music kind of happening at the same time. It's heavy, but maybe it's not heavy enough to really make it big with the real metal crowd. There are a couple of weird ballads, like kind of like soft tunes on here. And maybe Gary's vocals, although I like them a lot, aren't for everybody. I don't know. I also don't think that guys doing like kind of solo-ish records like this were really kind of hit. You had the oddball thing like Aldo Nova and a few others, but most people were more gravitating towards bands at the time. And this is who's this Gary Moore guy, right? So, and I don't think like for the casual fan, I don't think he carried enough from being with Thin Lizzy. I don't know how much that meant to anybody at the time, right? Because he was kind of in the band so briefly. So yeah, I love it. Would I have loved that this was huge? Yeah, but I don't think anything on here. And again, is anything on here like top 10 or top 20 Billboard hit charts, top, FM? I don't know. This, I mean, I did hear some of this stuff on the radio, but it's clearly was never going to be a huge album as much as I love it, right? All right, next up, Extreme. Three sides to every story. Adventurous, loads of fun, lots of variety, too long, perhaps. It's not the kind of party album that the previous album was. Porno Graffiti's lots of fun, very kind of hair metal, funky metal, all that sort of thing. Had the big ballad on it, right? There's really nothing on here like that. There are bits and pieces. I just think that you mentioned before going over everybody's heads. I know we hate to say that, but I think this was maybe a little bit too adventurous for everybody. I think it's an absolute amazing achievement for them. But by 1992, people are moving towards more depressing. The whole Seattle scene is exploding. I think this style of music is already falling out of favor. Hair metal's kind of dying, and this already is seen as kind of old. I think if this comes out, when was Porno Graffiti, Martin? Was that 90?
92, I think.
92? I thought this was 92.
Oh, that's more like 93,
Probably
90.
90. I think it was
Is
90.
it? Okay.
I don't even know if this comes out in 91, right on the heels of that, it makes as much difference. I don't know. I just think that by this time, just people were moving on to different things, I think, by now. So,
I gotta say, even though that's probably my favorite Extreme album, lately I've been thinking it's a little pretentious, it's a little clever, right? It's almost getting a little bit too much inside of like, oh, we're the great Extreme, like look what we can do kind of thing, right? And I
right.
think the balance is
Yeah.
struck a little better on Porno Graffiti.
Well, the Porto Graffiti is like a lot of fun to listen to, and it's
Yeah.
just like it's a big guitar album, and it's not trying to pretend anything other than what it is.
Yeah.
And your point about being pretentious, I think, is spot on because by 1992, when people are gravitating towards Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, there's no pretentiousness going on there, right? It's almost like this wants to be like this kind of like Pink Floyd of 1992 kicked up a notch, and it's like I don't think
Or
anybody.
you too, right? They want to
Right.
be you
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just I think there's going to be a lot of instances here where timing is a big factor in why some of these albums weren't big. And my next choice, oh geez, I forgot to pull it out here. Hold on, is Dog Man from King's X. Let me get the right one out.
Yeah.
So again, I really like this album a lot. It's kind of dark in spots, right? There's a lot of this is 1994, right? There's a lot of dark music happening and popular at the time. Look at the Seattle scene is a perfect example of that, although that's already starting to die by then. It's heavy, but it's not too heavy. There's weird kind of Beatles influences going on. I don't know. To me, King's X, as kind of cool as everybody says they are, and I think they are, I don't know if there's any King's X album, Martin, that really could have and should have been massive. I just don't know. All these albums are just so eclectic and weird, and it's proggy but not proggy enough. It's heavy but not heavy enough. It's poppy but not poppy enough. Uh, I also don't know if Doug's voice is like tailor-made for the masses, even though he's got a great singing voice. I don't know. I've always had this kind of conundrum trying to figure out King's X and like why this wasn't a big band because everybody talks about it. And Dogman, I mean, I would think Gretchen, maybe even the first album might have more hit potential than Dogman. I don't know. Just I like Dogman. It's one of my favorites, but I like it for reasons that aren't commercial and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it got a little heavy and doomy. And, I think, there's a lot of things they have going for them. And you would think that there are songs here and there that could have been the kind of song that would have elevated and dragged the rest of the album along to bigger hit status. I mean, this is probably the poster child for a band that we think should have been huge, right? But also, I think lyrically, they can be a little obscure, right? They
Yeah.
really don't explain themselves well in their lyrics. Yeah, it's a little psychedelic when it comes to lyrics quite often.
And some of their mellower stuff, their more poppy stuff has like, especially like as you get later in the decade, has like that kind of like alternative rock flair, but
Mhm.
not full on, right? There's still those
Yeah,
other elements that I think don't work for people who are listening at the time who were listening to straight alternative rock music, right? All of a sudden, King's X, oh, maybe they're a little too heavy. Yeah, they're maybe a little too proggy. I don't know. It's just they're a little too Beatles-ish, right? I don't
yeah,
know. Very strange. All right, my next choice is Magnum on a Storyteller's Night. So this is an example of one of those bands that from the UK, British band who on the surface have all the elements of what should have been a big band in this country, but they never did dick in this country at all. But they have these wonderful songs, these great vocal harmonies, great instrumentation. You would think people into like Journey and Foreigner and Survivor would love stuff like this, these memorable songs. But I think the problem is there's a little bit too much of that. You mentioned that pretentiousness, that's kind of like pomp rock thing going on here, and they just did not have the look at all. I mean, I don't know how well people
yeah,
can see that. I don't know if I have a better picture. Probably
yeah.
not. But they just, you talk about a band that did not have it when it comes to the image. Magnum is one of them. You could any of these songs have these great, amazing choruses that are very memorable, and could have been MTV fare or radio fare here. But then you look at the guys, and it's like, yeah, you're not going to sell them like a Bon Jovi or like a Journey or any of those other bands. So great stuff. It just never translated here at all. And then let's see, I don't have a copy, but Tommy Shaw, Ambition.
Yeah.
Uh, Fun album. Coming from Styx, though, maybe it's a little too kind of synthy, a little too poppy, a little too slick. When Tommy came across as kind of like the anthem kind of guy in Styx, and then he puts out Ambition, and there's some good songs on there, but I think to me it's just way too poppy, too many synths. There's not enough guitar on there, and he cut his hair short and everything like that. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Ambition didn't really work out well for him, or none of his solo albums. He's one of the main guys in Styx, but it just never really translated over on the solo side of things. And I think if he would have had a little bit more rock on the album, I think it might have done a little better. But to me, it's a little light. So there we go. That's my first five.
Okay. All right. My next five, I'm going to start with Hughes-Thrall. And again, this album always comes up. Everybody, yeah, this is a regular for this sort of situation because it is Glenn Hughes in a very kind of commercial place. Pat Thrall, there's the two guys there. I went and played it again, and I still don't get the merit of this album. I just find it's not full of hits. I don't think hit songwriting. It's a little busy. It's a little fusiony even at times. But it's, ostensibly a commercial album. I don't think the album cover is very good. The name of the band is just confusing. Two guys, duos. So yeah, I just don't see the merit in this album particularly. Next, I don't have a copy anymore, but Blue Murder. This is another one that always comes up. A lot of very smart people think this should have been a huge album. I play it and I just find it again a little busy. It's a little too yeah, atmospheric. There's noise kind of all over the place. It's a trio. Carmine's been around the block a few times. We know John Sykes was quite difficult to deal with. Tony Franklin's kind of like a weird character in here with his fretless bass and stuff. And yeah, I think Carmine's yeah, I think he's too loud in the mix. There's cymbals all over the place. The album cover's not very communicative. You've just got this, Blue Murder on the cover. So yeah, I mean, it had some things going for it, but I just think this is a band that's more like behind the scenes. I wonder if those guys were, to deal with those guys probably doesn't seem to be like it would have been a lot of fun. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, and I also think too, I think they were trying to play off the success that John had with Whitesnake on the
Yeah.
the '87 album, but this came out what 2 years later. Maybe that, the 2 years can be a long time when you're talking music and albums, right? And I think there are certain qualities of that album that carry over from the Whitesnake album, but it's a darker album. Other than a couple tracks, it's not very uplifting, And I also
Yeah.
don't think they didn't pick I don't think they picked the right singles for that album either, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Here's the thing. The whole kind of theme of this episode is put on your manager hat, your A&R guy hat,
Yeah.
your label hat, whatever. A bizarre thought, but imagine, because I don't think John Sykes is very high in the mix, and I'm still, the verdict's out whether I think he's a dynamic enough singer, and I think maybe he is. But imagine if John was higher in the mix, they worked harder on the vocals, and he was not particularly considered the guitar hero in the band. Imagine him just as a frontman, possibly. He's got the looks for it and stuff. So it's crazy. But a John Kalodner kind of character might have said to him, "Put the guitar aside, just be a frontman. Let's try that out. See what it looks like." Right? It's kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
the
Or maybe
look.
just
Yeah, I
look
think
in the
his voice is
video.
very good, actually. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All right. Next I've got HSAS Through the Fire. This is another one that was mentioned in the comments, and we all love this album. I mean, this
Yeah.
is one of the great Sammy Hagar albums, but the band is called either HSAS, which is a mouthful, or Hagar Sean Aronson Shreve, which
It's
is
like
even
make up your
more of a
mind, right?
mouthful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Through the Fire isn't even very good for a title. And we all know it's a live album, right? So it's live, it's noisy, it's electric. I don't think that this is particularly hitsy. They did cover Whiter Shade of Pale on here, which kind of helps, but there's some pretty heavy stuff on here, but there's just a lot of noise and electricity going on. It doesn't strike me as a particularly easy drinking album for radio kind of thing.
Yeah.
Next I've got April Wine, Nature of the Beast. There's a single from it. And I think the whole idea with this band is this is proto hair metal. They're a band kind of in a good place for a certain time. They had their time, the 90 through 81. This album was fairly successful in the States, but the times are changing. It feels a little poppy, pomp rock. There's a little bit of true heavy metal on here, on what are these? Yeah, Crash and Burn and Future Tense, amazing heavy songs on here. It had some poppy hits. It did okay, but the look's getting a little 70s for the 80s.
Oh yeah.
Granted, it is early, but putting on our A&R hat, what's one thing they always tell the guys? Lose the beards, lose the facial hair, right? No, facial hair's out. You can't do that anymore, kind of thing, right? So those guys. And then my final one for this round is so this was mentioned in the comments. I found this a little surprising. Masters of Reality Sunrise on the Suffer Bus. I love the debut album. I think the debut album had a lot of hit quality to it. Chris Goss strikes me as a little bit of a recluse, of a behind the scenes guy. He strikes me a little bit like a Frank Black, where he's, he doesn't look like a rock star. I think he gained some weight, might have been bald. But on this record, they've got Ginger Baker, who we know is difficult to deal with. This album was loud, quiet, obscure, weird, not very accessible. The first album was just like pounding, awesome hard rock, heavy metal, Southern style heavy metal. It's a masterpiece, right? We all love it. But I remember getting this and just thinking, this is bizarre. It's almost like they were actively trying not to make a hit album. It's a little bit like their Nirvana in utero, almost, in a way, right? So yeah, this was very strange to me when it came out, and I don't think it really has much going for it. Sunrise on the Suffer Bus, very weird sort of title as well. Not a great album cover. So there's my next five.
Cool. Yeah, that album covers, I always thought it was a little bizarre. Whatever. All right, next up here for me, Voivod Outer Limits. I didn't pull my hard copy of it, but yeah, I mean, the problem is you could pick any Voivod album. I don't know if there is a Voivod album that could potentially be a masterpiece hit album. Masterpiece for sure, but hit album, I just don't, I have a hard time. Voivod and mega successful act, just to me, just doesn't compute
Yeah.
as much as I love them. I mean, seriously, whether you pick
Yeah.
this album or any of their other albums, we love Voivod. They're amazing. They're different. They're odd. They're unique. They're brutal. They're powerful. They're psychedelic. They're sci-fi. They're prog. Whatever. They're all these things. But this is not a mainstream band. This is not a band that's going to do Metallica numbers or even like Slayer numbers back there in the early days. It's just the way it is, right? That voice, the herky jerkiness of their music, and Outer Limits. I don't know if that's any more accessible than any of their other albums, but it's a really good album, but not a hit album. Testament Low was picked by someone. Now, I think Low is a pretty terrific album. I think most of the Testament catalog is really, really great. They've had some mild success here and there. I think the problem with the Low album, for one, it's really, really heavy. It's also a little bit past the time where thrash is doing pretty big business. It also, in spots, sounds like it's trying to sound a lot like Metallica, which I don't know if that's good or bad for them, right? But I think that this is right around the period before they're starting to kind of touch into like a little bit of death metal on a couple albums. I think it's a really good album. There's great guitar work, the production is great, but mid 90s thrash isn't doing, even Megadeth aren't doing like tremendous business around this time. So I think there's a reason for it. People love it, which is great, but if it came out 4 or 5 years before, we might be talking a different story. Next up is Jethro Tull Stormwatch. Uh, this album did okay for them, but it was not a big album. It wasn't nearly as big as Songs from the Wood and Heavy Horses, which came before it. It's a much darker album, Stormwatch. Everything about it's desolate, cold. That's the feel of the album. There's really nothing, there's no potential hits on here. The proggy stuff is dark and kind of cold, and I love it. I think it's great. It's not the uplifting folk prog hard rock albums that the two that came before it. It's certainly a little bit more desolate sounding, and I think that's the reason. And by this point in time, we're finishing out the '70s. Prog is starting to kind of fall by the wayside anyway. And as we saw with their next album, they started to incorporate more use of synthesizers and electronics to kind of '80s their sound a little bit. So I think they were ready to move on from this kind of folkiness of this stuff. So that's my next pick. And then I've got my next two will be from the same band. First one is Genesis Trespass. So when you really think about it, to pick this one as should have been really successful, should have been a hit album, the next couple albums really weren't successes either. I mean, if you look at Nursery Crime and Foxtrot and Selling England by the Pound and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, those were like very moderate successful albums for the band. They really didn't start selling albums till after Peter Gabriel left the band. So to kind of pick this album, which is their first It's their second album, but it's the first real album of them sounding like Genesis. There's no hits on here. This is all very kind of obscure but excellent early progressive rock. Um, I don't know why anybody would pick this as a potential hit album. I love it. I think it's great, but this is not, an ELP album, right? This is early Genesis, very kind of moody and atmospheric and dramatic and yeah, not commercial at all. I love it for all those reasons, but yeah, that was not going to be a hit. And then on the same token, same band, Genesis Calling All Stations. Someone actually picked that.
Mhm.
So of course, this is the only album that they did. Uh, well, I should say the only album they did. Well, yeah, the only album they did after Phil Collins left the band, and they decided to do with Ray Wilson. So they brought in Ray Wilson to sing vocals on the album. Um, I don't really think it's a great album. It doesn't really sound like Genesis all that much to me, and I think based on when it came out, and this was what, 1993 or four, something like that. It was early 90s. I think the world had kind of moved on from Genesis, who were so huge for so many years beforehand. And I really don't think the world was ready to accept Genesis without Phil Collins at that point because he kind of became Genesis there for so many years. And I always felt bad for Ray Wilson because, it's not like it's a terrible album. I just don't think it's a very good Genesis album. And I just don't, I think that album was doomed from the beginning and it was never going to do really well. So, yeah, those are my one, two, three, four, those are my five. Back to you.
Nice. Okay. Next, someone picked It Bites Once Around the World. I don't have a physical of it. I remember feeling some excitement about this band, especially Eat Me in St. Louis, that album, Francis Dunnery. It seemed like the kind of band that had, one foot in the commercial. It could have done well. They had the kind of Peter Gabriel style vocals on it, a little bit even dance metal to it. It seemed like it had a hard edge to it as well. So it had some heaviness, some progginess, some commercialness. But again, it just goes kind of way over people's heads. It's the name of the band is It Bites. It's just an obscure band from the UK. They're not gonna really do well in the States. This is one a lot of people bring up all the time. Tragically Hip in general, massive band in Canada. This is Phantom Power, one of their bigger albums, cool album cover. But yeah, so this is a band that kept trying to make it in the States. I just find that there's something about them that's a little bit ordinary. There's something a little, when you bring up that CanCon thing, in Canada you have this thing where there's a certain amount of Canadian elements have to be there to be pushed on radio kind of thing. So they were very Canadian. They had a lot of Canadian references like place names, a little bit like Gordon Lightfoot and Stompin' Tom Connors up here where it's like, oh, they mentioned our town kind of thing, right? So they had a lot of that going on with them. Very poetic, very interesting lyrics, very nerdy, strange frontman in Gord Downey. Sadly, we lost him to brain cancer. Same thing that we lost Neil Peart to. But yeah, it's kind of like adventurous general rock and roll, and a fairly strong Rolling Stones bent to it, but not Rolling Stones with all the personality of the Rolling Stones in the playing. It's more like we're just playing general rootsy rock kind of thing, right? A little hard sometimes, a little country rock sometimes. I don't know. It's people say this is the quintessential Canadian band, and I think when they say that, there's a lot of negatives that go with that as well. It's not just positives, right? So yeah, they tried. America just didn't get them, and I kind of understand. It's a little quirky and ordinary at the same time.
I haven't listened to a lot of their music, but everything I've tried to check out hasn't done anything for me. And I like, well,
Yeah.
why does everybody talk about this band? It's
Exactly. I know. I know. Okay. Next, I've got Angel. Angel, the debut album. This was mentioned. I think this is a masterpiece. I think it's their best album, tied with Hell of a Band, maybe. Absolute killer record of Deep Purple, Your Eye Heat progginess. I think the production's amazing on it by Derek Lawrence and Big Jim Sullivan, despite those guys are not considered great guys to deal with as producers, but it sounds really, really good. But I think it's just they had the logo, they had the look, the package. They're on Casablanca. They should have done better, you would think, but I think it's just a little bit too cerebral to do well. So that's
Yeah,
Angel.
I've often talked about I think they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think that if they released
Yeah,
that
that's a good
album
point.
three or
Yeah.
4 years maybe 3 years
Yes.
beforehand when Prague is big, that
Yeah.
album was really well. I also think there's enough kind of glamminess to that album that maybe it was too early, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like if Angel, even like the couple albums that came after that were still too early because I think if Angel released a couple of those albums in like 83, 84, 85, big band, they
Yeah.
had the look, right? They would have fit right in with that whole crowd.
Yeah.
They were just
Absolutely.
they were too early and too late at the same time.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Okay, my next ones are just as you had it there. Two albums by the same band. Let's start with this one. Gamma 2. I feel like possibly the vocals are a little bit too bluesy and sonorous and Robin Trower like out of Davy Pattison to be considered a proper full front man. This is a little heavy and bluesy and proggy for the day. This is 1980, so we are moving into the modernity of the 80s. We're moving into a new wave time. Heavy metal is not a particularly big thing at this time. It's the pause before the storm. I don't know if Ronnie Montrose was the easiest guy to deal with. Um, and there's probably some infighting going on in the band at this point already, a little bit of a confused direction. Ronnie did not care about hits at all. He was not careerist in that way at all. I always loved this album cover with
Oh
the
yeah.
with the tear in the back showing where the songs are. So cool, right? And obviously the front's amazing too. Um, and then by the same band, Gamma 3. So there's your single and your full album of that. So on this one, what they ended up doing was going very, very keyboardy and synthesizers. Mitchell Froome is a big part of this album, but it still doesn't sound like hit songs. It's just kind of like heavy songs, but written in this modern arrangement. Not particularly hooky. Again, it almost feels like it comes from a fusion place. Um, but it's much more accessible than that. But again, they're confusing even all the old Gamma fans with this new direction. They only made the three albums. Later on they got the reunion album, which is even more different, but all three of these albums are very different from each other. So yeah, total confusion, and not the greatest album cover. um and yeah, that is my let's see, one, two, three, that's my next five.
Okay, cool. All right, my next choice is Skid Row Subhuman Race. Someone picked out. I personally think Subhuman Race is loads of fun. Problem is, I think I've always thought the album is probably heavier than what most Skid Row fans wanted at the time. Those first two albums, full of hits, full of anthems, very, very radio friendly, MTV friendly, and then Subhuman Race comes out and they're trying to bludgeon you even more. And I'm not sure that's really what people wanted. Plus, again, look when it came out. Grunge and alternative all of a sudden becoming really, really popular. And I think Skid Row kind of didn't really fit in there anymore. Badlands. Now, this is an album that I think should have been enormous, but the reason why, again, 1989. I think this comes out in 87 at the height of like when Whitesnake is big and all those other bands. I think this would have done huge business. They had the look, they had the songs. But I think by the end of the decade, I think this style of music is this kind of bluesy, hard rock, metal, whatever, is already starting to fall out of favor towards other stuff. And I don't think the record label really knew what to do with them, unfortunately. And then you had all this shit with, going on within the band and whatnot. This should have been huge, but I think you can kind of see why. Comes out we've talked about it before. This comes out a couple of years earlier. This is a massive, massive album. Next up, Dream Theater Awake. Again, another album I love. But unfortunately, they follow up the somewhat big Images and Words with this, and this is not really like Images and Words at all. That album is full of all these great melodies, amazing playing, sparkling production, just grabbed everybody's attention as something new and fresh. And then they put this album out, which is a little bit darker, it's a little bit heavier, and there's no pull me under on here. The songs are, again, they're pretty long. Some of the shorter songs are a little mellow. It's got great playing. I just don't think it sparkles, and it's just not the attention grabber that the album that they did before it was for whatever reason. So this didn't do nearly as well. Um, then I've got let's see, what do we got here? Forbidden. I grabbed the wrong album. Twisted into Form is the album that was picked. This is Forbidden Evil, but I think Forbidden in general were never going to be as big as Metallica or the Big Four. I think this is a very good, very competent mid-tier thrash band. It's fun to listen to. It's not quite as polished as some of the other bands. Maybe the musicality not on the same level of even like a Testament or what have you, but a really, really good band. But not all these thrash bands were meant to be really, really big, I think, and Forbidden's one of them. And then my last two for this round are from the same band, and I thought it was totally cool that someone picked these. Styx, The Mission, and Styx, Crash of the Crown. Both really great albums. I love both these albums. They've now been out for a few years. They just have the brand new album out, which makes a trio of new albums from the band. Uh, these are, if I look at the whole Styx catalog, I would rank both of these fairly high. You know, maybe not as high as those classic 70s albums, but fairly high. They're definitely prog albums with some little, AOR touches and things that Styx does. But the problem is, why these albums should have been huge. Well, look at the musical landscape of today. There's no way this stuff is going to be huge today.
Yeah.
If we go back to like 75, 76, maybe we're talking a different story. There's kind of cool Queenisms on here and stuff. But in, 2016 and 2020, whatever this was, 2022, 21, these aren't going to be huge albums. Are Styx fans appreciative of them? Are they checking them out and loving them? Sure, but the masses are not listening to Styx anymore, other than going to see them live in the summertime and watching them play all the hits all over again. So yeah, I get why they weren't big. Would it have been fine if they were? Yeah. Back in the day,
Well,
maybe.
and just in general, two other points like rock and roll is a young man's game, right? It's an old band, right? It's there's that they got that going against them, and then also no albums are big now, right? I
No.
mean, what is a big album? It means you've got a lot of plays on Spotify, and we know everybody complains about how little you get paid on Spotify, anyways, for streaming. So they're really it's really you could almost take any recent album and say, yeah, we know why it's not big because albums are not a
In
thing.
general, yeah, nobody's buying this stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So my final batch, I don't have a physical of this. Saxon Innocence is no excuse. So we've talked about this before, how
Yeah.
Saxon just kind of like really pooched the whole trying to be a hair metal band thing. They didn't have the look again, lose the facial hair, and there's guys balding in the band, and they just dressed ridiculously. Nobody could dress them properly. Um, they they had kind of cheesy covers that they would do, album covers as well. But yeah, it just they just never fit in this whole hair metal thing. It seemed like everything they tried to be part of it just did not work. They lost the momentum. Their golden era was the new wave of British heavy metal, and that's how it was going to be. And they weren't a band that was moving to LA or anything like that. Next, I've got Pat Travers' Black Pearl. This one was mentioned, and I love this album. It actually is very close to possibly my favorite Pat Travers album. But his time is kind of past at this point. I think the main reason this album didn't make it is it's got that little apostrophe up there. So now we don't know if the name of the band is Pat Travers' Black Pearl or is it Pat Travers and this is my Black Pearl album. I don't know. And then it gets even more confusing here. Bigger picture of Pat, and then it says Black Pearl is. So now, okay, is he part of the band? Is it him and Black Pearl? Why do you put that on the cover? But seriously, I mean, I don't think obviously that's not the main reason it's not big, but all this stuff just confuses people. It confused me. I think it's a great album, but it's a little all over the place. It's a little complicated. It tries too many things. I think I La La Love You is just a masterpiece of songwriting. I think I'm sure that's to my mind, is my favorite Pat Travers song ever done. Um, the production's good. You think maybe Misty Morning could have been a hit on this, but yeah, it's a little busy, and his time has passed. And maybe Pat Travers along the way, he's had a lot of drug problems at the time as well as he's going through this period. He's a big drinker and stuff. Maybe he rubbed some people the wrong way in the industry, for all we know, as well. So there you go, Pat Travers. Um, Next, I've got, see, we've done that one. That one, Black Sabbath Cross Purposes was mentioned. Again, it's 1994. Metal is in a weird place. Metal is out of vogue. Tony Martin, too many lead singers. They're not particularly being grunge. They never tried hair metal. They're just kind of being warmed over. Ronnie James Dio era Black Sabbath. So it's just there's no particular reason why this is going to work for the guys at the time. I think there's just been too many lineup changes in the band, and there's just not a lot of excitement ever around this era of the band. Um, Next, I've got Trillion. So here's Clear Approach. This one wasn't mentioned, but I thought I'd take this out. Here's my Dutch copy of the album that was mentioned. Here's my single, and here's my Canadian copy of the album that was mentioned. And I went and played this again, and this is one of those short-lived punk rock bands. Um, I played it, and again, you put your A&R hat on, and you go, this direction is confusing. They're trying too many things. Every song is a little bit too fussy. Everybody's overplaying a little bit. There's no personalities that are pushed within the band. There's no pictures of the band on the front or the back of either of these. So on paper, they're kind of making the kind of music that could be big. It's kind of like poppy hard rock. Um, and this stuff was a little bit in vogue. Well, I guess frankly, most of the stuff that, I mean, nothing really hit big from this genre. New England, there was a little bit of a hit for them. Styx is doing well, I suppose. But no, it's not a hard rock time. It's not a prog time. It's kind of like a new wave time. So yeah, and you're pushing a baby band. So again, should this album have been big? We never really talked about this, but we are talking about the bottom rung of the ladder, and a lot of those first bottom rung of the ladder bands never really get off the drawing board, sort of thing, right? And then finally, I've got Midnight Oil, Blue Sky Mining. Here's a band we don't really talk about all that much. I don't know how this happened, but I ended up seeing these guys like 3 times in the 80s and 90s, kind of thing. Um, but they're from Australia, so that is a negative in itself. It's far away, but they did tour a lot. There was a lot of excitement around this band with Diesel and Dust. Even that was something like their fourth or fifth album. They had a lot of records, but they're complicated, thorny records. They're kind of like heavy, proggy, post-punk, new wavy. They're trying to do a lot of things. But Diesel and Dust, the great thing about that album is it was really hypnotic. It was almost like the AC/DC version of that band. And there was a lot of excitement around them. You got this big, bald Peter Garrett, lead singer, crazy kind of weird voice out of him, but people liked it. And they had this environmental activism stance that got them a lot of press as well. But then when you got to this album, they kind of mellowed out a little. It's a little more acoustic guitar-y. It just doesn't have the bite and the excitement that the previous album had. And yeah, I just think they had a lot of stuff going against them that wasn't going to make them a particularly massive commercial success. So there you go.
They were kind of big for a minute here, right? It's like
Yeah. Yep.
wasn't very long. So
No.
I just realized I did 6 in my last round, so I got one less here, but we'll finish up. So it
Okay.
was very interesting to see this band mentioned. Very cool that they were mentioned, but Psychotic Waltz never going to be a massive band. So they picked Psychotic Waltz the whole catalog, and I'm thinking, so I picked Into the Everflow, and this came out in what 19 God, what year? It was the late 90s, right? Or 1992, something like that. Whether it was the late 80s or early 90s, it really doesn't matter. So this is like dark, dense, progressive metal, fairly technical. This is before Dream Theater kind of breaks big. So really all you had before then was kind of like Fate's Warning. We know Fate's Warning were never a big band. This is darker than Fate's Warning and maybe Queensryche to an extent. I think this is a fantastic album, a fantastic band, but there's nothing on these albums that's going to be for the masses at all. This is for people who like this sort of thing, and that's it. So yeah, I just can't see in any reality that Psychotic Waltz is a major, major band. But love them, absolutely love them. Glad we have them. But yeah. Next up, Boston Walk On. So a lot of things going against this, right? So this is what, 1994. So it's now been, how many years since the last album?
It's 87 or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like 8 years between each album. It's just ridiculous. And by this point in time, nobody knows who's in the band anymore. And then you get the album and you're hearing a couple different voices, but you're not hearing Brad Delp, right? You're hearing Fran Cosmo, who was Fran Cosmo sang in Orion the Hunter. Great singer, doesn't really sound like Brad. And ultimately, does this sound like Boston? I don't know. To me, there's good songs on here. I like the album, but this is not the first album. This is not the second album. It's not even like third stage either. I don't think it's as good as that. There's some good stuff on here that gives you some of those Boston feels, but I just think by this time, I think people have kind of moved on already. It's just too many years between albums. Nobody knows who's in the band. Is it just a studio project at this point? I don't know. Next up is Danzig 2 Lucifuge. Now, this did fairly well, but let's just think about it for a second. Is any album called Lucifuge going to sell 5, 10 million copies, Martin? I kind of don't think so. I kind of
Yeah.
don't think so. The album cover is very kind of evil looking. I think there was an aura about Danzig that was that attracted a lot of people, especially metalheads. But these are dark albums. These are, are they doom albums? Are they gothic albums? Are they hard rock albums? They got a little bit of everything. I think these are great. The first bunch of Danzig albums, I think, are great. But I totally get why this is not huge stuff. I mean, even like, them touring with Slayer there in the late 80s, I think gave them a little bit of boost, but it wasn't really sustainable, I don't think. But always, I think, going to be a very, very cool cult band. I don't think Danzig was ever going to be massive. And then my last pick for today is another good pick from someone. It's Toto Falling in Between. So this is a much later album. And again, like what we talked about with the Styx situation, great album, great songs. If they came out in 1983, 84, 85, here, big business potentially. Because I think there are some absolutely accessible melodic rock songs that Toto excels at. But, when you're releasing an album like this in 2015 or 2017 or whatever year it came out, I forget, nobody here's buying it. Just like, the album thing is not working here, and you're not going to get these songs released as singles here anymore. So, a really great album, really strong album from them, but it's just way too many years too late, and it's just basically relegated to fans of the band because new people are not going to discover songs from Falling into in Between from Toto if they're not familiar with Toto. It's just not going to happen. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Very nice. Cool. Yeah. So I guess just in a general sense to mention, I think when people answer this question, they don't really, they'll put something down that, like you say, that they like. They don't kind of go through and think about, well,
You
really
have to, right?
should it been huge kind of thing. And then there's also like, they could sincerely be actually making a good point and saying it should have been huge in my world, right? In my subgenre, in the people who think like me, it should have been like a minor classic or whatever,
Right.
or a cult classic, and turn this band into a regular, like a Clutch or a King's X, a regular band, a band that's going to get 1,500, 2,000 people out everywhere because they're just good, right? So there's that goes behind it. But yeah, it always drives me crazy when I see certain things on these should have been huge, because it's like, no, definitely not. We love them, but no, they shouldn't have been huge. So,
Yeah, well, that's the hardest part of this, right? Is to get out of our own brains, so to speak. It's like, yeah, we love them, we're passionate about them, we don't understand why the rest of the world doesn't love them. But to stop and think about the rest of the world, you're talking millions and millions of people who like certain types of things, certain types of music, and some of this stuff is just not going to click with it's just
yeah.
not. It's
Yeah.
just not. It's always destined to be for this small subset of listeners who are like us, who are like our viewers. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's really, when you really look at it, would it have been nice for some of these bands to have had big hits with these albums? Absolutely. 100%. But it's just not the way it works. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, so few albums really make the big time. I mean, that's the reality of it all. So thankfully, we have the rest of our lives and we have these physical or not physical things that we can go listen to and revisit this stuff and love it whenever we want to. But it doesn't mean that 5 million other people are going to do so, right? Or have done so.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Nice.
So, Martin, what's cooking over on your end there? That's books and podcasts and
Well,
content.
the latest book is the Guns N' Roses at 40, so I still have that, and the Maiden book as well.
Did you see my review? I posted my review yesterday. A lot of people
Oh,
are.
nice. Okay, I haven't seen that yet. I'll check it out. And also, I've been updating a lot of books that are coming out through my UK publisher, so I'll soon have back in expanded version the Max Webster, the Accept, the White Snake, the Scorpions, one other one, Merciful Fate. But yeah, we've got the audio podcast as well, History in Five Songs with Martin Popoff, the one I do with John Gaffney, Kicked in the Teeth, and yeah, Contrarians. There's always stuff coming up, and that's it.
Cool. Maybe one of these days when Merciful Fate comes around to releasing a new album, you can really update that book
Yeah,
and put some
exactly.
interesting new information in there, right?
Exactly,
Holy
exactly. Yeah.
moly. I
Yeah.
keep seeing these little snippets of news things that are like, oh, we're working on this and we're finishing up some songs. And I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
it's now the middle of 2025. So when can we expect this? 2028 at this point?
Well,
It's
no, it's really like he has been working on a King Diamond album, right?
right, right.
So, that puts Merciful Fate off even further,
I
right?
know, I know. It's like so, yeah. So that we're all salivating for another Merciful Fate album. We're like, yeah, but that's not going to get released till after the King Diamond one is finished. So no matter how much is done or been completed or written for the Merciful Fate, that's
Yeah.
not a priority right now. But
Yeah.
whatever, whatever. I think anything we get from this guy and his camp is a good thing. So
Yep.
whatever comes first,
Absolutely.
we'll whatever. So.
Yeah.
All right, so coming up here on the channel, we've got 4 Fusion Friday tonight. We've got a very interesting four square of albums to talk about, and it's also going to be a de facto ranking the albums episode because all four albums we're talking about tonight are the four releases from the Fusion supergroup Cab, featuring Tony McAlpine and Brian Auger and Bunny Brunel and Dennis Chambers. So tune into that tonight on 4 Fusion Friday. That'll be on 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time tonight. Tomorrow we've got two cool episodes for you. It's kind of like a weird weekend. We've got UK Connection, follow-up sequel to our episode last Saturday, talking about bands from the US and the UK who are huge in one country but didn't do shit in the other country, right? Just totally couldn't get any success in the other country. So our part two of that is happening Saturday afternoon. And then Saturday evening, Jamie Laszlo and myself will be bringing you a kind of different review crew episode. We're going to be looking at the year in music so far in 2025. We're doing like a halfway point in the year episode, talking about our favorite 20 releases that have come out so far in 2025. And then Sunday, I'll be bringing you two ranking the album shows. One of the very cool British hard rock AOR band Grand Prix, featuring current members of Uriah Heep and Robin McCauley also at one point as well. Three albums there. The other episode will be three albums from Possessed, the very cool early death metal thrash band from here in the US. Three albums on that discography as well. So two short little ranking the album shows. And then Monday, we've got the Hudson Valley Squares coming back, talking about our favorite solo albums from notable folks from a hard rock and heavy metal band. So that's coming up on Monday. So till then, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as a post. Please do hit the like button before you leave. Please visit all of Martin's links as well. Check out some books, watch the Contrarians, and check out those podcasts. And we'll see you next time here at Friday at Funhouse. For Martin Popoff, I'm Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Happy 4th of July, and we'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.